Hey there, friend. Welcome back to the Construction Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Bradley Hartman. I'm excited to share with you my conversation today with Mr. Matt Semonik. He is a former U.S. Marine Corps platoon leader. We talk about some of the leadership principles and some of the tactics used in the Marine Corps that really influence his leadership today. And he's currently the Chief Executive Officer of Arnold Lumber in the great yet tiny state of Rhode Island. In this episode, we cover a lot of territory. We talk about some lean principles. Matt is a Six Sigma black belt, so he knows a lot about lean. He's trained other people on lean, how to identify waste. We talk about analytics. We talk generally about change management, how to drive a sense of urgency, and how to initiate change in your organization faster. So we talk about all of that, and we talk about a remarkable water bottle and an idea about myself that was completely destroyed by my conversation with Matt as to my own physical fitness and health. We cover all of that and more. You're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Matt Semonik, COO at Arnold Lumber. As always, thank you for listening and watching. Mr. Matt Semonik, COO, Chief Operating Officer at Arnold Lumber. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bradley.
Dude, I want to jump right in. Let's talk about your experience in the Marine Corps. What led to that decision to join it? Maybe some of the leadership lessons that you learned there.
Sure, fantastic. The decision really came pretty early on in my life. I was 17, 18 years old when I decided that was the track that I wanted to take. I felt up to that point, had really been allowed to do whatever I wanted to do in life. I had the opportunity to go to school, to ride my bike wherever I wanted to ride it, to eat dinner every night in a safe environment. And I felt a need to really pay that back in some sense. And then there was the desire or the strange adolescent boy need to shoot things and blow things up.
Yeah. So place me. Where were you? Where did you grow up? What was family life like? Circa like sixth grade.
Sure. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. My father worked in the steel industry my entire life. My mother worked for the airlines. Very blue collar family. Grandfather grew up in the coal mines. That was kind of the environment. And my other grandfather was a carpenter. So I learned that hard work pays off, that work ethic is important to ensure that your family is successful. So I was surrounded by that and surrounded by a big family. My mother was the oldest of 9. I was the oldest grandchild of 23.
Okay.
And that's just on one side of the family. So a lot of family gatherings, a lot of gathering around the TV to watch Steeler games or Penguins hockey games.
Sounds terrible, but I understand what you're saying.
So just a great life. It was provided a lot to me.
So as you think about how you lead yourself and lead your team, are there a couple principles or fundamentals beyond hard work that I think you think of Western Pennsylvania, kind of the history and the culture of that going back to like the late 1800s? Certainly understand that hard work gene, but as you think about your time in the military with the Marine Corps, are there still principles and things that shaped who you are now that you use every day?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that the Marine Corps instills in you is the importance of loyalty, the importance of knowing your team, and knowing what actually drives your team, knowing yourself and the constant need to seek self-improvement, and then really how to build trust in a team. And I think that's a lot of that has shaped really everything that I've done after I exited the Marine Corps in 2001. I use this term all the time. everything in the Marine Corps is done under a 5-paragraph order. So whatever the operation is, it gets passed down through the ranks as a 5-paragraph order that continually gets broken up and parsed out into smaller pieces. And one of the most important parts of the 5-paragraph order is the commander's intent. So in any military operation, there are specific things that they are requiring you to do, specific objectives to obtain, and specific actions to take throughout the whole process. Well, a lot of times all of that falls apart. But if you know the commander's intent, if you know what the end state is supposed to be at the end, anybody on the team can drive the team to get to that result. And I think that's utterly important when you look at teams in business, when you look at sales teams, when you look at operations teams. Ensuring that everybody on the team understands what the end goal is and why that's important is instrumental of hitting that goal.
Absolutely. What might that look like? This idea of kind of commander's intent, which is, I'm assuming in battle, the old quote from Mike Tyson is that everyone's got a strategy until you get punched in the face. If all that goes to hell and you're like, well, hey, I remember Matt was really clear about the end state. What might that look like, or an example within Arnold Lumber?
Use a great example. Understanding what's important for the customer, that this is what the customer needs. So if the forklift operator, the counter salesperson, the inside salesperson understands why the customer needs it, or why it's important that the customer gets it when the customer wants to get it, then they'll be more apt to do it and make sure that it happens. And we have to trust our people. We have to, if they know what the end state is, you then communicate that to them, and in most cases, step out of the way, allow them to do it. And in most cases, you're really surprised at how well they do.
Well, I found too, it's sometimes when things aren't happening or they're not happening in a certain way, somewhere along the way it was like, well, this is what Hartman wanted. And I'm like, no, this isn't what I want. This is very specific what came from the customer or this prospect. And I realized that's my fault.
Right.
I didn't articulate the full reason why we're doing this. And the fact that it's not about me, it's about the customer. But again, I think that's kind of communication and just.
It is ensuring that you're reiterative. I don't even know if that's a word.
That you
we'll run with reiterate over and over again on what the desired outcome is, so everybody understands. I repeat a lot of things throughout the day, and I think most of the managers that report to me could probably run through a list of 10 or 12 things that I say all the time. That, whether it's a cultural idiom or whether it's a leadership direction or trait that I'm trying to make sure that they emulate. I say it over and over, and it helps me too.
Mm-hmm. What would be at the top of the list? Obviously, Brian was here with us. I know a handful of people at Arnold Lumber. If they're listening to this, they're going to be like rolling their eyes and nodding their head like, this dude always says this. Like, what's something that's top of mind right now?
Hire culture first.
Hire culture first.
What
does that mean to you and to them?
I obviously I came from outside of this industry. I've got experience through various different size companies, various different industries. And the one thing that has always been true, you can hire a technical expert and you can target a technical expert. But when you do, you also need to ensure that you understand what other things come with that technical expert. There may be 35 years of experience doing something a certain way, and if that's not the way or not the culture that you're looking for, you can run into leadership challenges trying to change that person to do it the way that you want to do it. So I look to hiring culture first and teaching the technical aspect after. It's always great when the two go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. It's always great when you can find somebody that has the culture that you desire, that also comes with the technical expertise. But we can't be afraid to step out of that box and commit to training people to be the best that they could be. But a cultural sound team is a team that typically wins together.
you will often hear, especially in the construction industry, whether it's a commercial contractor we're working with, or it's a dealer, or anyone in between, will often say, it's like, listen, dude, it's sticks and bricks. One goes on top of the other. It's not hard. Give me a good cultural fit, and we can teach them that. And then we actually go to hire somebody, and they're like, dude, I really need like 15 years of experience in this role. And I was like, wait a minute, you just said we could teach them. I'm like, wow. Teaching people and training people is really hard. So I don't know.
You absolutely have to have a combination of both.
Yeah.
If you look at the Arnold Lumber team, we have employees that have been there for 35, 38, 40 years. Yeah. And they are phenomenal contributors to what we're trying to accomplish on a day-to-day basis. We also have people that have 2 weeks with the company that have zero experience in the lumber industry. But that's our responsibility to make sure that they get that. It's our responsibility to make sure that we provide them the opportunities to learn, that we team them up with people that are going to help them. Because if we don't do that, if we rely upon strictly hiring experience, we're going to be in a world of hurt in 10 years when the experience is no longer there.
If I can, I want to revisit this 5-paragraph order. I've never heard of this before. What are the other elements that are in there? Obviously, the commander's intent is kind of like above. If nothing else, here's where we got to end up when it's done. Are there any other exciting elements of the 5-paragraph order, or you're like, it's just 500 words of bureaucracy? Let's keep moving.
No, it's a way to organize what you're doing.
Okay.
There's 5 paragraphs. Obviously, the first one is situation.
Oh, all right.
Then mission, execution, admin and logistics, and then command and control. So it really outlines the way to perform any task, any mission, and really helps keep everybody on track.
I'm glad I asked. There's a professor and educator at Texas A&M, Dr. Pat Semonik, who I've had on the show. Lovely guy, but he told me, actually he taught me by responding to an email, and you just put bluff, and then he listed a few things. And I looked at him like, bluff. I'm like, all right, well, I'm curious. He knows that. So I look it up, and bluff stands for bottom line up front. Now, I think he was in the Air Force. And then I looked at the email that I sent him. It was probably a couple hundred meandering words. And then at the very end, I asked what I needed. And that was his way of saying hey, let's give this some structure. Tell me exactly what you want, bottom line up front. So situation, mission, execution, admin and logistics, and command and control.
Yes.
I've never heard this before. I like it. It's interesting. Maybe just transition just a little bit away from that. You spend a lot of time. You are a Six Sigma black belt.
Yes.
Which means to me you're some level of lean nerd. What? I mean that in the best way. What sort of core principles do you see? I always go back to. Obviously, this means if you're a black belt, this means not only are you trained, but you've also know the content so well you can train other people. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what are there, for folks that are listening, that I feel like for the better part of the last 2 decades, lean has been somewhat in vogue where people are interested, and I feel like there's kind of fits and starts in the construction community about applying them. What stands out to you the most, or what is something, maybe if you said, hey, I got 5 minutes with you, Hartman, and I can explain some core fundamentals about lean, here's where I would start, given the fact that you're a Six Sigma black belt.
I think one of the biggest things is, 80% of your problems are typically tied up in 20% of what you do on a day-to-day basis. Okay. And all lean and Six Sigma methodology does is allow you to think of things differently. In most cases, we make decisions based on gut. Mm-hmm. And very little decision based on the true data behind what's actually happening. And there are a lot more data points and a lot more factors in everything that we do that are that can really be utilized as a predictive analysis of how a person is going to perform, how a process is going to perform. So really, it's an opportunity to take a step back, look at a situation or a process as a whole, look at the inputs of what actually goes into that process. And it's typically 2 or 3 of those inputs that are driving 80% of the issues with the process.
Okay.
And not just be reactionary to everything that takes place. So a lot of times if you take 5 minutes to think about it and look at how things are playing into the specific situation, you can make a more informed decision on what to do next.
What might be maybe the first 1, 2, or 3 questions you have? So maybe I'm like, hey man, we got this process. We thought it out. We had a process map. We're doing this. It's not working. Whatever we're doing isn't working. And you come in from the outside, you don't know really any of the details. Is there a hierarchy of questions that you would say, well, let me ask you this, and then we could start to just understand it, like almost regardless of the actual problem you've got. Does that make sense?
Yes. You need to, you ask first, where does the process start and where does the process end? And what are you trying to get to? What are the steps in between?
Okay.
And a lot of times we have, with every process we do, we have extraneous steps that just do not add value to what we're currently trying to achieve. And then the biggest, once you have that framework of what that process map actually looks like, then it's really taking a step back and observing the process. Because in most cases, we design a great process. And then after step 1, the process goes awry. Whether it's an individual that's doing something differently outside of the process, whether it's a new obstacle of some sort that injected itself, and that could be a new customer, a new piece of equipment, a pothole in the road. It could be anything that causes the process to change. So as you observe the process as you think it is, you then define the process as it actually is, and then you figure out what you need to pull out of that process or add to that process to streamline it to the best of your ability.
I often think that one of the biggest obstacles to just stopping and just observing is kind of just the schedule and just feeling like I don't have the time to do that. How do you think about that, or how would you coach your team to say, like, when you say, like, I don't know, observe it, what's happening? But that kind of requires you to slow down, withhold judgment, and just watch what's happening. And that's why I think it's so easy for outsiders to come in and be like,
just stop and listen.
What's that guy doing? And you're like, oh my gosh, Jimmy, I don't know. I know Jimmy. Jimmy's a great guy. I've been watching him do this every day for 5 years. How do you coach people to do that? Is there any magic, or is it just?
There isn't. There's just reiteration. Okay. Some of it goes into trust, in them ensuring that they trust the leader, that the leader's telling them the right things. Mm-hmm. And I'll talk to my managers and I'll pull them aside and say, hey, let's go look at this together. Okay. And you'll get the pushback. I've got so many things to do today and I'm behind on this. And it's like, well, listen, let's just stop for 5 minutes. Let's go out and let's take a look on how these trucks are being loaded and some of the things that you can pick up on right away. Yeah. And it typically works, but I say a lot of just stop, mm-hmm. Just listen to me for a second. Yeah. And I think my management team will tell you too. I don't have all the answers. I don't claim to. I'm not the best lumber salesman out there. I'm not the best logistics manager out there. I'm not the best inside salesperson. I'm none of those. We hire people and train people and develop people into being the best that they could be. And it's no different than you're not going to have your punter be the quarterback for the second series of the football game just because you think he needs to. Mm. You put the right people in the right spots. So just ensuring that they trust that you're seeing things mm-hmm. differently, that you're taking a different perspective to what they typically would is important.
Well, I think that phrase is, let's go look at this together. Simple phrase. I'm probably guilty of not saying this often enough. And whether that's with my kids or it's like, go do it, right? I saw something and then I'm coming back and I'm telling somebody to go back and explain that versus like, let's you and I look at this together. Make sure we are looking at reality together, understand your point of view, likewise mine, and then we go do something.
Well, Bradley, I think that's important because all too often we're only looking at the outputs. Mm-hmm. So we're only looking at what our sales were for the month, what our profit was for the month, what the number of orders that we actually processed. Those are all lagging indicators. And it's great, and we need those. But if you're not looking at the process, if you're not spending time with the people that are performing the process and doing it, then you're never going to change what those outputs are. So that time's so much more valuable. And once a manager, a supervisor, or a team lead realizes that, and how much more they can drive the end result if they observe the process as a whole and guide people in that, the quicker that you can really change the output.
Well, we were together in Denver at the end of 2022. I finished a keynote largely talking about analytics, but analytics tied to kind of roster construction, how we build stronger teams, how we think about, I think, the inputs and the outputs a little bit differently. You hopped up afterwards and you opened up your laptop, and I'm like, yeah, you are doing things that 90+% of other people aren't, which led to us being here. How has that process of bringing analytics to informed decision making in an industry that largely doesn't have a lot of this, what's that process been like, and what insights might you share with people who are listening that really aren't using a whole lot of analytics at all to really drive decision making?
It, like anything that's been around for a while, trying to make that change and trying to inject something new is often a challenge. I made the comment earlier that I'm not the best lumber salesman. What I do need to be is the best salesman for the organization. I need to be able to sell to the people that report to me the vision of where we're going to go, the vision of what we're going to do, the vision of why something is important or not important, to sell them to trust, to join the team, the effort, the process in making it better. So when you start presenting data that's different from what the gut feeling is or the conventional wisdom on something is, there's a lot of selling that goes into that. And when I looked at things, I had to understand what it actually meant. And understand how that impacted the business to be able to then go to the sales manager and say, hey, we need to take a look at this, and this is why, and be able to explain those data points so he understood how that was actually impacting the business. And some of the things, I think what I shared with you a year or so ago, I walked into this industry, and the thing that I kept on hearing is, an outside salesman needs to produce between 2 to 2.5 million right out of the gate to be valuable to the company. And the more that I thought about that, the more I thought, well, if I have somebody selling 2.5 million in an extremely low margin, and have somebody selling 1.5 million in an extremely high margin, there's a difference in the impact that they have on the business.
For sure.
And we're not necessarily looking at all of the data points that we need to look at. And we were only looking at one. We were looking at the top line sales number, right, and using that to evaluate what we think of the outside salesperson. And that struck me as odd. That struck me as pretty close-minded on how we make a determination whether or not somebody's successful. And so when I started peeling back the onion and started looking at the inputs of what goes into what makes an outside salesperson valuable to the organization, there was really more of a realization of return. And what was the ROI on that salesperson, or at the time I coined it as the contribution factor. What were they contributing for everything that I was investing, or what the company was investing in them? So it gave me a different way to look at how they actually impact the organization.
We were kind of diving in a little bit just on kind of cost to serve. I can only imagine, given the education you've got into Six Sigma and Lean, and then see how a lot of these relationships exist between salespeople for a lumber building material dealer and then a builder, whether that's single family home or multifamily or commercial. I feel, now, having been on both sides, there is waste wherever we look. Wasted motion, wasted effort, physical waste in terms of product. Have you been successful at all in presenting data to both the salesperson and the builder to basically say, hey, how can we make each other more efficient? And maybe what has that looked like?
Yes, to an extent. We've taken some things where, we look at returns from a builder and how that, we know how that impacts us. We know what the soft costs are of going back out to a job site and picking up 20% of the load that we just dropped off 3 days earlier. So we've used that as a pretty good example to bridge the communication between the lumberyard, the salesperson, and the builder to say, hey, listen, here's a way that we can impact what you're doing right off the bat. Mm-hmm. Because if you're over ordering 20%, you've got employees and framers and roofers and people walking around this stuff on the job site.
My experience is they walk on it.
Stepping on it, right? And once you start showing them the data of, all right, well, you returned, you asked us to come pick up 20%, mm-hmm. and we could only give you credit for 15 mm-hmm. because of damage, cut, nails, this, that, and the other. They start to see how that impacts their business. Now, it's, we know the struggles with employees and how many conversations you actually have to have. So you need to be able to educate your salespeople to be able to have those conversations, because they're going to have them over and over again.
Yes.
with the builder.
Yeah.
Not for any other reason, as we're all creatures of habit. We do what we do because we've been doing it that way for a while. Yeah. So it's helpful to train the salespeople to then be able to help educate everybody along the line.
My career, I would say, has been improved and made me so much more intelligent, even just in terms of common sense, by suppliers and people, obviously tradesmen who were on the job, suppliers who saw what I was doing, saw what we were doing, right, as construction managers, and said, in various ways, with various words, with various levels of aggression or, niceties, to say, you're doing it the hard way. And when you do it the hard way, you're not helping yourself, you're not helping us, and this is just a bad way to build. But I'm like, so many people, and some of these guys were like mentors for 3 weeks. They came to the job site and kind of helped figure out how we can make it better with lighting or paint, but so many of these people made my jobs better. How do you train salespeople? Because there's often a level of risk there when you're asking a salesperson to go in and say, hey, let me coach you, let me educate you, let me help you help us. For a lot of salespeople, they're like, that smells like risk. This guy might tell me, who do you think you are? Get out of the way. And by the way, I can buy from your competitor tomorrow. How do you do that from a leadership standpoint?
Well, I think there are a few things that go into that. One, you have to have the trust of your outside sales team. You have to paint and show and demonstrate to them that what you're trying to do is to make their job easier. The things that you're suggesting, the things that you're presenting to them are really to make their job easier, to help support them, to help them earn what they want to earn to support their family. So if you have that trust, then it really, you have to rely upon them to build the relationship, because without the relationship with the builder, they're not going to have the trust to be able to have those candid conversations. And you're not going to, every salesperson's not going to get through to every single builder or every single remodeler. It's not going to happen. But the better they build those relationships, the more trust that their customer has with them, the easier it is to have those conversations.
We talk about change management, and we looked at I showed a slide with the Cotter 8-step change management model, and there's elements of that I'm like, absolutely love, and the other ones I'm like, you can kind of take it or leave it. But the first one is establishing a sense of urgency, kind of why and why now? In an environment where a lot of people in our industry, I think you guys have been really successful over the past couple of years. You've grown, you've been profitable. Companies that have been in business for 5, 6, 10 decades are saying, hey, the last couple of years have been phenomenal. How do you drive a sense of urgency when part of the challenge you have is people have been successful?
Part of that is understanding the trends of the industry and knowing that it's not always going to be as easy as it was. And it was easier. There were different problems that we
Correct.
had in 21, 22, and 23.
Revenue generation just wasn't at the top of that list.
Revenue generation
easier.
was the easier part of things.
Right.
So, it really boils down to, making sure that you're, it's a forward vision, making sure that you're prepared to handle what's coming in the future. And the world isn't going to slow down. I think we've seen it with technology. I mean, we all have seen how cell phones have impacted everything that we do. How computers have impacted everything that we do. 8 years ago when I joined Arnold Lumber, we had reluctance to change. Going, the mindset was, well, we've been doing it this way. It works, and it does. I have a fear of being left behind. I have a fear of the competition being out ahead of me. And being the innovator, and I would rather be the disruptor than to be going, well, I'll wait to see how they do, and maybe I'll follow suit next year. So understanding that and really developing the culture on your team to embrace change and allowing them to understand that if you change and it doesn't work, we can always go back to how we were doing it. But having that buy-in in the diminishing the fear of, well, what's going to happen if I do this and it works?
Right.
Where's that going to take me? That's going to take, and that just adds on to the next step of, we'll tackle how we're going to pivot off of that when it does work, and it creates new opportunities, and it creates expansion or a different avenue or a new customer. There are a million things that can do. So,
Well, I think I wrote down retreat is an option. Obviously, tying back to the Marine Corps, that happens. Sometimes you're like, let's take this hill, and actually, let's not die on that hill. Let's retreat. But I think sometimes it's leaders saying, this might not work, and if not, I got a plan for that. However, the fact that this might not work is probably not the best reason for us not to do it, because I think there are certain things, we talk about analytics, we talk about technology, on a long enough timeline, we know for a fact e-commerce is going to be everywhere in our industry, and online ordering is going to be the only way people do this. Now, we might disagree on whether it's in 1 year or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, but we know the way that our minds are wired and what Amazon has shown us and all this is impacting who we are and how we operate. Right. In other cases, it's saying, hey, retreat is an option, and that's okay for the employees. But how do you think about that?
So I don't have an issue saying I was wrong. So I think with any good leader needs to be able to come to terms with they're not going to be right 100% of the time. I'm probably not right. I'm not right 20% of the time.
I thought you were going to say, I am not right 100% of the time.
No.
I'm like, no, that seems like a good admission.
No, and being comfortable with that, being comfortable with not everything that we do is going to work. Because doing what we've always done is just, it's safe.
Right.
And so we have to try new things. We have to look for ways to innovate. We need to look for ways to make it better for our customers. Our customers want to work, they want being able to work with us to be easy.
Yes.
They want it to be simple. They don't want it to be complicated. So if we can look for more and more ways to make it easier for our customers to do business with us, they're naturally going to continue to expand what they do. And it needs to be the same thing with the employee base. We need to make the job clear and concise for the employee and make it easy for them to perform the job. So,
all right. I'm watching watching the clock. We need to talk about something important. We had a conversation yesterday. I think I was fishing for a compliment. I know you are very disciplined and athletic, right? You said you ran how many miles last year?
Over 1,750 last year.
Over 1,750. I may or may not have ran more than 17.5 miles in totality last year. I don't like running.
I hate running, actually.
Question. You ran almost 1,800 miles last year. And I got a buddy of mine who he set a goal like for 2 years in a row. It's like, I'm going to run 1,000 miles. And I remember being like, okay, let me just break this down. So, okay, how do you do that? What do you like out of it? Obviously, you're a very fit man. Obviously, you like the results of that. But isn't there some other activity you could do if you don't like running?
There are. I think for me, there are 1,000 other activities other than running.
I was like, the answer is there are. Carry on, please. What do you like about it?
I like the fact that I can get lost in my own head when
Okay.
I'm running. And, the people talk about a runner's high. I think it's more of a zone.
Okay.
And I can get in a zone for an hour a day and just let my mind wander. And the adrenaline and the endorphins and everything else that comes with physical activity really helps me kind of set the day in motion. If I run 6 miles in the morning before I show up at the office at 7 a.m., I feel accomplished right out of the gate. So that helps.
Tell the audience about what's your habit. You said when you come to a new city, what do you do?
So I try to run at least 3 miles in every city that I travel to.
Okay.
So, I do it to explore the city. I do it because I think when you travel, you get in the habit of you're strung out, you're busy, you spend all day in a conference, you go out to dinner at night, you stay out after that, and then you're tired and you get up 15 minutes before you need to be at the next meeting next morning. It's just another way for me to kind of reset. And I've kind of challenged myself over the past 5 years that everywhere I go, that's what I'm going to do. So it's been
That is
fun.
a great way to explore the city. I have something similar but different. Mine is when I go to a new city or even a returning city that I've been to, I try to find a local university that I haven't been to, and I'll visit that. I'll buy a pennant. I say it's for my kids, but I will say after about a couple hundred pennants, my kids are like, whatever, dude. And I'll show them the mascot, and I'll say, okay, I was here. I end up with a lot of pennants. I think yours is much more practical and probably will help you live longer than just accumulating a ton of pennants. But that's interesting. I wanted to do, so anyway, to come back to where I was fishing for a compliment, I was talking about how good I'm doing because this the Swell bottle, however many ounces this is, I'm like, hey, if I just fill this up, I drink 2 of these a day. And I was hoping you'd say, given that you are such an athletic man in such good shape, you would say something like, hey man, good for you. That's really impressive. You did not. You said to me, you are not drinking nearly enough water. I was like, what? You sure? Please, what did you share with me and what would be your recommendation? And then lead into this super special water bottle Matt Semonik owns. Tell me about that.
So I would tell you that you have to drink at least half of your body weight in ounces of water. So take your body weight, divide it by 2, and convert that to ounces. Not convert it to ounces, just put ounces instead of pounds at the tail end of it.
I understand. So I weigh about 200 pounds. So I could drink 100 ounces of water a day. And you're telling me 2 of these is not 100 ounces.
That is barely 20 ounces a bottle.
Oh, man. Okay. All right. Yep. I'm having the same reaction I had literally 24 hours ago when we had this conversation. All right. So how do you get around that? How do you monitor someone who, by the way, how many miles are you going to run this year? Do you have a goal?
It'll be over 1,000. It won't be anywhere near. I trained for a marathon last year, so I kind of geared back a little bit this year.
Dial it back to 1,000. Sure. Yeah. Good for you now. Okay. So how do you make sure you get enough of your water consumption?
So I am a tech geek. I love apps and home automation, vehicles with all kinds of technology in them. Being that, and my son, who is a naval officer, which you need to be really, really smart to do. To be an infantryman in the Marine Corps, you really don't need to be smart. So he constantly reminds me of how much smarter he is than I am. Didn't think that I was smart enough to know how much water I should be drinking every day. So he bought me a water bottle that actually keeps track of it. And then it will remind me when I haven't drank enough. It will tie to my phone and to the apps that I use when I run, and either increase or decrease the amount of water that I should consume that day. So it's become a competition between myself and my water bottle on making sure that I drink enough water every single day.
And what is it called? What's the brand?
Hydrate Spark.
Hydrate Spark. Okay. You said it was about $60?
Yeah, it's about $60 to $70.
Is there a monthly subscription for the app?
No, not at all.
Gosh. Good. All right. Well, I saw the thing. It like lit up blue or something like that. What was that? The water bottle?
That's the water bottle telling me I need to drink it.
You need to drink it.
Exactly.
All right. I'm getting older. You know, I'm not going to ask a question about using the washroom more if I'm drinking 100 ounces of water a day. So I'll just have to manage that on my own. I'll get your advice offline. Let me ask you. You know, I'm a book nerd. And is there any book or movie or piece of advice or any sort of medium that is out there that you would recommend to anyone based on the way that it helped your career development and maybe it accelerated or maybe changed the trajectory, or any sort of anything you could share with the audience as we kind of close out that you think might help them as much as it helped you?
So there, and I'm going to go back to the Marine Corps. There is a Marine Corps manual. It's manual FM1, Warfighting, that really is an outline on leadership. I still have a copy today that, my office at home that I refer to occasionally, that really grounds me back to what it means to be a leader, what the expectations are, what leadership traits that you should aspire to obtain and uphold, and what leadership principles that really you should use to guide you. And every now and then I get off track, and I use that as really the litmus test to go, okay, where really should I be? Where should my mindset be? Which direction should I be heading? What's important for me to do to ensure that my team understands that I'm there to help them be successple, that we're there together as a team to ensure that the company lives on for another 100+ years. So that's my book.
I'm assuming the FM is field manual.
Field manual, yeah. It's like
why is there 2 FMs?
I have no idea.
All right.
No, I do actually. It's Fleet Marine Field Manual 1.
All right. Okay, I'm glad I asked. All right.
Don't hold me to that specifically. It's been a long time.
Check it out. Matt, I think that's a great place to end. Why don't we close out with our leadership mantra?
You are owed nothing. Deliver value first, Bradley.
Hey, man. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you.
All right, then, friends, how did that go? Hopefully you enjoyed my conversation with Mr. Matt Semonik. If you did enjoy this episode, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you listen to. That means more to us than you know. And if you are only listening to this as audio, know that we are also capturing this on video. You can look us up on YouTube to see my conversation with Matt Semonik. You can do that at YouTube by looking up Bradley Hartman & Co. And if you are watching this on video right now, well, make sure you subscribe and don't miss any more clips. Our goal is to make this easier for you to share insights like from Matt with your team and your organization to grow better, faster, more profitably. So thank you for investing your time and attention with me. That's all I've got. Make it a great week.